In the dazzling ballroom of New York, where crystal chandeliers lit hundreds of champagne glasses, only one woman sat quietly in the corner, Selena Moore, a 30-year-old journalist. Whispers curled into her ears. Poor thing, she came alone. The entire room looked at her as if she didn't belong. Glances slid across her figure, laced with pity and disdain. In that world of glittering wealth, her solitude shone more sharply than any light overhead. But then, everything shifted. Adrian Cole, the cold, commanding billionaire who ruled the room, stepped toward her. He leaned close, his breath brushing her ear, and whispered 4 words that turned the night upside down. "Pretend you're with me." Instantly, the murmurs changed tone. The same eyes that had judged her now brimmed with curiosity, even admiration. From invisible, Selena became the center of attention. In that fleeting moment, her dignity felt worth more than millions, and from there, a dangerous love story began. If you've ever felt the sting of being pitied, of being the outsider, stay with this story. It will remind you that even in the darkest room, dignity and love can still be found. The moment Adrian's voice slipped into Selena's ear, the air in the hall changed. Conversations faltered. Champagne glasses paused mid-air. A murmur rolled across the tables. She wasn't alone after all. Another whispered, "That's Adrian Cole." And she came with him? Selena felt her skin flush. Just minutes ago, she had been the subject of pity. The lonely woman tucked away in the corner. Now, the same people stared with curiosity, even envy. She adjusted her posture, trying to stay calm, but her pulse betrayed her. Why was this stranger sitting beside her? Why did he choose her, of all people, in a room full of glittering gowns? The warmth of his nearness unsettled her. His arm draped casually across the back of her chair. The gesture looked natural, almost intimate. Around them, the whispers softened into approving nods. Selena reached for her glass, hoping wine could steady her nerves. Yet each sip only deepened the storm inside her chest. The world had flipped in a heartbeat. From invisible to visible. From mocked to admired. And the question pressed heavier with every passing second. Who exactly was this man? Adrian leaned back slightly, as if the chair had always been his. Calm, certain. Every motion carried the weight of someone used to control. He turned to her at last. "You play your part well," he said in a voice low and steady. Selena blinked, startled. Play her part? Before she could reply, a guest approached. Adrian stood smoothly, extending his hand with ease. "My partner," he introduced, his tone leaving no room for doubt. His gaze lingered on Selena, pulling her into the performance. She forced a polite smile, nodding as though it were true. Her cheeks burned, but her body moved as if on instinct. She shook hands, answered small talk, all while stealing glances at him. He remained collected, speaking with quiet confidence. His hand rested briefly at her back, guiding her through conversations. The act was flawless. To anyone watching, they were a couple. Yet Selena's heart thundered. This was absurd. She barely knew his name, yet her pulse raced each time his eyes caught hers. Confusion mingled with something else, something she didn't want to name. He was a stranger, but the closeness felt dangerously real. The crowd didn't take long to whisper the truth. "That's Adrian Cole," someone breathed, "the youngest CEO on Wall Street. Cold, ruthless, brilliant, and single." The names and titles reached Selena's ears like shards of glass. Adrian Cole. Of course she knew the name. She had written about him more than once. His empire stretched across finance, real estate, and technology. He was the man headlines called untouchable. Selena's throat tightened. She had thought he was just another wealthy guest. But this was the Adrian Cole? The man who moved markets with a single signature? She tried to pull her hand from his, but his grip was steady, controlled. He leaned closer, his voice calm. "Relax, Selena. They're watching." The use of her name startled her. How did he know? Her pulse stumbled. Around them, guests whispered with fascination. The lonely woman from the corner was suddenly the woman on Adrian Cole's arm, and nothing about that image seemed casual. Selena's world tilted. She was a reporter fueled by deadlines and late-night coffee. He was the untouchable billionaire. How had she become part of his story? Adrian poured wine into her glass with smooth precision. His movements were practiced, refined, as though he had done this countless times before. Then, without asking, he took her hand. His palm was warm, his grip firm, yet unhurried. To the guests watching, it was a lover's gesture. To Selena, it was a trap she couldn't escape. She tried to pull away, whispering, "This is going too far," but Adrian only raised a brow, his lips barely curving. "Too far? Or just far enough?" The room responded before she could. Smiles, glances, silent approval. Every eye confirmed what his hand had declared. They belonged together. Selena's chest tightened. She told herself this was only pretend. An act to silence gossip, nothing more. Yet, when his thumb brushed against her skin, the line blurred. Pretend didn't feel so simple anymore. Her thoughts spun. Why me? Why choose me in this room full of women more polished, more prepared? Adrian's gaze found hers again, steady, unshaken. "Stay with me tonight. Play the role." She nodded faintly, though her mind screamed at her to resist. For reasons she couldn't explain, she didn't let go. The evening carried on. The hum of voices, the soft glow of candles, the sound of glasses touching. Selena kept her smile in place, though her chest tightened with each glance from across the room. Adrian leaned closer, his voice low enough for only her to hear. "Who said I'm acting?" The words hit like a spark. Selena turned sharply, searching his face for mockery. But his eyes gave nothing away. They were steady, unreadable, yet laced with something that made her heart stumble. She laughed softly, trying to cover the rush inside her. "You must be joking." Adrian's lips curved faintly, the closest thing to a smile she had seen all night. It wasn't wide, it wasn't loud, just a subtle lift, enough to undo her guard. Her pulse skipped, and warmth crept up her neck. For a second she forgot the crowd, the whispers, even the reason they were sitting together. One smile, one moment, and suddenly the game felt dangerous. When the music finally slowed and the crowd began to leave, Selena exhaled in relief. She thanked Adrian politely, slipping her hand from his. "This was unexpected," she murmured. Adrian only nodded, his expression calm as ever. He escorted her to the edge of the ballroom, then stopped. His eyes lingered on her face, sharp yet unreadable. "Good night, Selena," he said simply. Then he turned and walked away. She stood there, watching his figure disappear into the glittering corridor. Her heart pounded, refusing to settle. She told herself it had been nothing but a show, a performance for strangers who thrived on gossip. On the cab ride home, she repeated the thought again and again. It was pretend, that's all. But as she sat by her window that night, the image returned. Adrian's faint smile, his voice whispering close to her ear. She hugged her knees, frustrated at her own weakness. It should have been easy to forget. Yet, even in the silence of her apartment, his presence clung to her like a shadow. 3 days later, Selena stepped out of the newsroom. Her bag heavy with notes, her mind still tangled in deadlines. A sleek black Bentley rolled to the curb. The tinted window lowered, and there he was, Adrian Cole, immaculate as ever. Her steps froze. "What on earth?" The driver stepped out to open the door, but Adrian's voice came first. "If you're not busy, get in. I need 5 minutes." Selena stared. "You came here for a newspaper?" The corner of his mouth twitched, almost a smirk. "Not exactly." Colleagues passing by slowed, whispering in shock. Selena felt the weight of their stares press against her back. She wanted to turn away, to refuse, yet curiosity overpowered her. With a reluctant breath, she slid inside. The leather interior smelled of cedar and polished steel. She felt out of place instantly. Adrian glanced at his watch. "I won't waste your time." His calm tone only deepened her unease. This wasn't a chance meeting. He had sought her out. And Selena's heart began to race, not from fear, but from a sense that her life was about to shift again. Inside the car, Adrian leaned forward, his gaze steady. "Do you remember what I said at the wedding?" Selena arched a brow. "Hard to forget. You nearly gave me a heart attack with all that pretending." He didn't laugh. Instead, he slid a folder across the seat. "The press, the shareholders, even the board. They want stability. They want to see me with someone." Selena blinked. "And you want me to keep acting?" Adrian nodded once. "You played the role better than I expected. Smart, graceful, strong enough to silence the whispers." Her heart skipped. The absurdity of it made her laugh, though it came out unsteady. "You're asking me to become your fake girlfriend?" His eyes locked with hers, unflinching. "Exactly." The words hung between them, heavier than the city traffic outside. This wasn't just about appearances. This was power, reputation, money, and he was asking her to step into that storm. Selena stared at the folder, her throat dry. She was just a reporter, chasing deadlines. Yet this man offered her a role that could change everything. Silence stretched in the car. Selena leaned back, crossing her arms, refusing to look away. "If I agree," she said slowly, "I set the rules." Adrian tilted his head. "Go on." "I walk away whenever I choose. No questions asked, no strings." For a moment his eyes narrowed, calculating. Then, to her surprise, a spark of amusement flickered there. "Fine. You can leave if I bore you." Selena's lips parted, caught off guard by the hint of humor. She had expected control, not concession. She cleared her throat. "And one more thing. No using me as a shield for every social event you hate. I won't be your accessory." Adrian leaned back, his expression unreadable. "Agreed. But in return, you play the part completely when needed. No hesitation, no cracks in the act." The air grew heavy again. She nodded slowly, though her chest tightened. Their hands met in a brief shake. His grip was firm, his touch warm. A deal had been struck. "Pretend," they both said. But deep down, both knew, once you start playing with fire, the line between pretend and real never stays clean. Their first appearance as a pair came faster than Selena expected. A charity gala in Manhattan, crowded with flashing cameras and watchful eyes. The car door opened, and Adrian offered his hand. She hesitated only a second before taking it. His touch was steady, grounding her as she stepped onto the red carpet. Inside, the hall was alive with music and chatter. Selena felt every gaze press against her shoulders. Her new heels betrayed her, catching on the carpet's edge. She stumbled. Before panic could rise, Adrian's arm circled her waist. The movement was swift, practiced, yet protective. He whispered, "Steady. I've got you." Heat rushed to her cheeks. For the cameras, it was a romantic moment. For Selena, it was something she couldn't explain. The evening went on, and though she faltered with silverware or small talk, Adrian covered each slip seamlessly. A quiet joke, a guiding gesture, a nod that redirected attention. By the time dessert was served, whispers had softened. Guests no longer looked at Selena as the outsider. They saw a woman claimed, defended, chosen. And deep inside, she wondered if even Adrian could tell where the act ended and something else began. While Adrian spoke with investors, Selena slipped away toward the buffet. She needed a breath, a moment without eyes on her. Two men stood nearby, their voices low but urgent. "Cayman accounts, BLC Holdings," one muttered. "Funds moving faster than expected." Selena froze. The words struck like a bell inside her journalist's mind. Cayman, BLC. She had seen those names buried in dull reports at the newsroom. Rumors of money laundering, untraceable accounts. She kept her gaze on the champagne glass in her hand, pretending not to hear. Her heart hammered. Every syllable etched itself into memory. When she returned, Adrian's sharp eyes found her immediately. "Where did you disappear to?" Selena raised her plate with a smile. "Getting dessert?" He studied her face as though he could read beneath her calm. Finally, he let it go, turning back to his conversation. Selena forced a bite of cake, but the sweetness turned bitter on her tongue. She wasn't just playing a role anymore. This stage carried secrets, and the whispers she overheard might be the lead every reporter dreamed of. Only this time the lead was tied directly to the man now standing at her side. A week later, Adrian invited her to a concert at Carnegie Hall. Selena had expected another stiff gala. Instead, she found herself in a velvet seat beneath golden lights, the hush of the crowd surrounding them. As the orchestra began, she stole a glance at him. His posture was straight, his jaw tight, but his eyes softened with the music. Between movements, his voice dropped low. "When I was little, my mother used to play pieces like these. She said music teaches you to listen." Selena turned, surprised. "I didn't think you'd talk about family." He kept his gaze forward. "She died when I was 10. A pause. "My father believed silence mattered more than music. No mistakes, no weakness." The words cut deeper than he let show. For the first time, Adrian wasn't the untouchable CEO. He was a man carrying scars. Selena's chest ached. She wanted to reach for his hand, but she only whispered, "That sounds suffocating." Adrian finally glanced at her, gray eyes glinting. "It was, but it made me who I am." The music swelled again, but Selena no longer heard only violins. She heard the quiet ache inside the man beside her. After the concert, Adrian surprised her again. Instead of a limousine dinner, he led her into a small cafe tucked on a quiet street. Wooden tables, soft yellow lamps, the smell of roasted coffee. Selena blinked in disbelief. "I never thought I'd see Adrian Cole sitting here like an ordinary man." He smirked faintly. "Don't tell anyone. I'd lose my reputation." She laughed, startled by his dry humor. The sound eased the knot in her chest. For a moment, he wasn't the billionaire. He was just a man sipping cappuccino across from her. They spoke of music, of travel, of small things that didn't make headlines. His voice lost its sharp edge, and she found herself smiling more than she had in weeks. Yet, when he stepped outside to take a call, her instincts returned. Selena pulled out her phone, snapping photos of the sponsor list she had collected. Names connected to the Cayman Whispers. Her pulse raced. This was the story of her career. But when Adrian came back in, she quickly slid her phone away, stirring her coffee as though nothing had happened. He raised a brow. "Something wrong?" She smiled lightly. "Nothing. Just deciding if I should order dessert." Back at the newsroom days later, Selena buried herself in reports. The glow of her laptop lit up rows of numbers. Then her eyes caught it. A transfer record. BLC Holdings. Funds traced to offshore accounts, and at the bottom a signature bold and unmistakable. Adrian Cole. Her breath caught. She zoomed in, praying she was wrong. But the strokes were precise, confident. Exactly like the man himself. The room seemed to tilt. Her stomach twisted. This wasn't gossip overheard at a gala. This was evidence. If true, the billionaire who held her hand at galas, who spoke of his mother's music, was tied to a crime that could shake Wall Street. Her heart pounded with betrayal, but also denial. Could he really? She leaned back, pressing her hands to her face. The same man who had caught her stumble, who had softened over cappuccino, was now the suspect in her investigation. Duty as a journalist demanded she follow the lead. Yet her chest ached at the thought of exposing him. The page glowed coldly on her screen. Money, power, crime, and Adrian's name written clear at the bottom. Her story and her heart had just collided. The file still glowed on her laptop screen. Adrian's signature stared back at her, bold and undeniable. Selena pressed her hands against her face. "He could be guilty," she whispered. "He could be laundering millions through offshore accounts." But another voice pushed back inside her chest. "He could also be the man who steadied you on the red carpet. The man who spoke of his mother with a voice that cracked at the edges." She leaned back in her chair, torn between two worlds. Her training as a journalist demanded truth above all else. Facts, evidence, exposure. Her heart, however, betrayed her reason. Every moment with Adrian replayed in her mind. The protective arm, the quiet smile, the rare laugh at the cafe. Was it possible for the same man to be both? Criminal and comfort. Ruthless CEO and fragile son. Selena clenched her fists. She had never faced a conflict like this. Justice versus love. The world versus her own heart. Her phone buzzed on the desk, dragging her back to reality. She had to decide which voice to follow. But whichever choice she made, something inside her would break. It happened sooner than she feared. Adrian stood in front of her desk at the newsroom, tall and sharp as glass. His gray eyes burned with fury. "You've been digging into me," he said. His voice was low, controlled, but edged with fire. "Tell me, Selena, did you get close to me for a story?" Her throat tightened. Words caught, tears stung. She shook her head, then nodded, then broke. "At first, yes," she admitted, her voice cracking. "I wanted the scoop, the scandal. I'm a reporter. What else would you expect?" Adrian's jaw clenched, his hands fists at his sides. "But then—" Her tears spilled freely. "Then it wasn't about the story anymore. I didn't mean to feel this way. I didn't mean to care about you." Silence pressed between them, thick and merciless. Adrian's gaze hardened. "So, all of it? The smiles, the dinners, the nights we spent pretending? Was it all a lie?" Selena's voice broke. "No, that part was real, even if you don't believe me." His eyes stayed cold, unreadable, but pain flickered at the edges. And in that moment, she knew the line between them had snapped. Adrian's silence felt heavier than any shout. His face was stone, carved by years of control, but his voice sliced like steel. "It's over!" The two words shattered her. He turned sharply, walking away with a stride that left no space for hesitation. No backward glance, no mercy. Selena's knees buckled as she collapsed into her chair. Her hands trembled over the keyboard, the empty document glowing on her screen. She tried to type, tried to frame the story with cold professionalism. Billionaire Adrian Cole, accused of laundering funds through offshore accounts, but every letter blurred. Her tears blurred the screen, her fingers slipping against the keys. How could she write about the man who once held her hand, who once whispered to her in the dark as if she mattered? She buried her face in her hands, choking on sobs. The newsroom hummed around her, oblivious. Phones rang, printers whirred, conversations carried on. For her, the world had stopped. The only man she had ever allowed into her guarded heart had walked away, and she couldn't even decide if she had lost him to betrayal or to the truth. 2 nights later, Selena sat in a dim cafe, her laptop open but untouched. The cursor blinked on a blank page. Her inbox chimed. An anonymous email appeared. No subject, no signature, just one line. The real man behind this is Richard Hale. Be careful. Attached was a file. Selena's breath caught as she opened it. Scanned contracts, bank transfers, each marked with Richard's name, not Adrian's. His signature repeated again and again. Her pulse quickened. Richard Hale, Adrian's most trusted vice president. Selena's chest tightened. Adrian's name had been forged. The pieces shifted, the story changing shape in her hands. She pressed a palm to her forehead. Relief flooded in, chased by guilt. Adrian might be innocent, and she had doubted him. She had let him walk away without knowing the truth. Her eyes blurred as she whispered to herself, "What have I done?" The cafe around her seemed too bright, too loud. But inside, all she could hear was his voice. It's over? Now she knew. It wasn't over. Not yet. Not until she proved the truth. Selena left the newsroom late, the streets dark and quiet. Her bag hung heavy on her shoulder, filled with notes she could no longer ignore. Footsteps echoed behind her. Slow, heavy. She quickened her pace. The sound followed. Turning a corner, she froze. 2 men blocked her path, their faces hard, eyes sharp. One held a glint of steel. A knife caught the streetlight. "Miss Moore," one sneered. "Mr. Hale says it's time you stopped digging. You don't want to disappear, do you?" Her throat tightened, but she forced a shaky smile. "You think you can scare me into silence?" The man stepped closer, pressing the blade forward until it hovered near her ribs. "Not scare. End." Selena's breath came shallow. Every instinct screamed to run, but her body was locked. She clutched her bag tighter, heart pounding so loud it drowned the city's hum. In that moment, she knew this wasn't just about stories or headlines. This was about survival. Her voice trembled as she whispered, "I won't stop." The knife pressed closer, and the shadows around her deepened. The game she thought was pretend had just turned deadly real. The knife hovered close, its glint slicing through the night. Selena's pulse thundered. Her back pressed against the cold wall. Then, the roar of an engine shattered the silence. A black car screeched to a halt at the curb. Police sirens wailed behind it. The door flew open, and Adrian stepped out. Tall, broad-shouldered, his presence cut through the darkness. His gray eyes burned like steel. "Touch her," he growled, his voice low but deadly clear. "I dare you." The men froze. The weight behind his words was enough to make them falter. They cursed under their breath, then bolted into the shadows as the police closed in. Selena collapsed against the wall, her breath ragged. Adrian was suddenly there, his hand steadying her shoulder. "You're safe now," he said, though his own voice shook with the adrenaline he fought to contain. Tears blurred her eyes as she whispered, Why did you come?" Adrian didn't answer right away. His jaw was tight, his chest rising sharply. But the look in his eyes was answer enough. He had never stopped watching over her. Selena's hands trembled as Adrian pulled her into the car. The door slammed shut, leaving the night behind. She turned to him, her voice breaking. "Do you believe me now?" For a moment his silence hurt worse than the blade had. But then, slowly, his hand reached across the space between them. His fingers closed over hers, warm and firm. "I believe you," he said, the words rough, almost hoarse. "And I'm sorry." Her throat tightened. Tears spilled before she could stop them. She squeezed his hand, clinging as though it were the only solid thing left in her world. Adrian's gaze softened, the cold mask finally cracking. "I should have trusted you from the beginning. I should never have let you face this alone." Selena shook her head. "I was scared too. I doubted you, and I hated myself for it." The sirens faded as the car sped through the city. For the first time in weeks, the storm between them eased. Not gone, not healed, but softened by truth. Selena leaned back, whispering, Thank you for not giving up on me. Adrian's grip only tightened. Never again. Days later, Selena's article went live. The headline was sharp, the evidence laid out with precision. Forged signatures, offshore transfers, records tying Richard Hale to the scheme. Within hours, the city buzzed. News outlets picked it up. Social media lit with outrage. Richard Hale's name trended for all the wrong reasons, and Adrian Cole, once branded as the villain, was suddenly seen in a new light. Not the mastermind, but the victim of betrayal. Selena sat at her desk, breath unsteady as she watched the story spread. This wasn't just her career's defining piece, it was her chance to make things right. That evening, the police confirmed the arrest. Richard Hale, handcuffed and stone-faced, was escorted into custody. Selena exhaled, her body sagging with both relief and exhaustion. She had done it. She had cleared Adrian's name. But deep inside, a quieter truth pressed harder. She hadn't written the story just for justice. She had written it for him. Her heart still carried scars from his cold goodbye, but tonight, with the city roaring for truth, she whispered to herself, maybe now, maybe he'll see me differently. The press conference hall was packed. Cameras flashed, reporters shouted questions. Adrian stood tall at the podium, dressed in a simple dark suit. His expression was steady, but his eyes carried weight. I have been accused, he began, his voice firm. But the truth has come to light. The man responsible has been arrested, and I want to thank the person who risked everything to uncover that truth. He turned, extending his hand. Selena froze, breath caught in her chest as he reached for her. The room gasped as she stepped forward, her fingers slipping into his. Adrian's voice softened, yet carried across every microphone. Selena Moore. She believed in the truth when no one else would. She saved me. Flashbulbs exploded. Reporters shouted louder, stunned by the sight of Adrian Cole, the untouchable billionaire, holding a woman's hand in public. Selena's cheeks burned, but she couldn't look away from him. His grip was steady, his eyes clear. For the first time, he wasn't hiding behind cold walls. He was declaring her, not as a shield, but as someone who mattered. In that moment, admiration and affection tangled into something undeniable. Selena's body still carried the weight of the attack. A shallow cut along her arm, bruises from the struggle. The doctors ordered rest, and so she lay in a hospital bed, pale but alive. Adrian never left her side. He sat in the stiff chair by her bed, reading reports, answering calls, all while glancing at her every few minutes. When a nurse brought fruit, he insisted on peeling an apple. His hands, usually flawless in boardrooms, fumbled clumsily with the knife. The slices came out uneven, awkward. Selena chuckled weakly. You're terrible at this. From the doorway, a soft laugh joined in. Emily, Adrian's younger sister, leaned against the frame, eyes bright with mischief. My brother, the great Adrian Cole, can handle billions but not a piece of fruit? You've changed. Adrian shot her a look, but even he couldn't hide the faint smile tugging at his lips. Selena's chest warmed at the scene. Family, laughter, care, things she never imagined finding in his world. Emily winked at Selena. Whatever you've done to him, don't stop. He's finally human. Selena reached for Adrian's hand, squeezing softly. For the first time, the weight of danger gave way to something lighter. Hope. The hospital room was quiet, lit only by the soft glow of evening. Selena rested against the pillows, her arm wrapped in bandages. Adrian sat close, his hand covering hers. For once, his confident posture was gone. His shoulders bent, his voice lower than she had ever heard. Selena, he whispered, I owe you the one thing I've never given anyone. An apology. Her eyes widened, but she stayed silent, waiting. I doubted you. I pushed you away when you were the only one who stood for me. I let pride blind me, and I almost lost you. His fingers tightened around hers, trembling slightly. Selena's chest ached at the sight of him undone. This wasn't the Adrian Cole the world knew. This was a man stripped of his armor. He met her gaze, steady now. From today forward, no more pretending. No more masks. Just us. If you'll still have me. Tears stung her eyes. She reached up, brushing her fingers against his cheek. I never stopped. For the first time, the walls between them fell. And in that room, apology turned into something greater. Renewal. The Hudson River shimmered under the fading light of sunset. Waves lapped gently against the pier, carrying the sound of the city in the distance. Adrian stood beside Selena, their hands linked, silence stretching between them. For once, the quiet wasn't heavy. It was full. He drew a breath, then pulled a small velvet box from his pocket. The sight made her heart stutter. "Selena Moore," he said softly. "I can't promise perfection. I've lived too long believing flaws were weakness. But with you, I've learned they make us real. What I can promise is this: I'll stand by you, always." He opened the box. A simple ring glimmered in the light. Nothing extravagant, but radiant in its honesty. Selena covered her mouth, tears spilling. "Adrian!" He slipped the ring onto her finger, his voice shaking now. "No more pretending. Will you give me a forever?" She nodded through her tears, laughing and crying all at once. "Yes, 1,000 times, yes." He pulled her into his arms, pressing a kiss to her forehead as the river reflected gold around them. For the first time, neither of them had to act. Autumn painted New York in shades of amber and gold. But the Blackwood estate did not host a grand gala this time. No tuxedos in the hundreds, no glittering chandeliers. Instead, the garden bloomed with roses, rows of white chairs set for only a handful of loved ones. Selena stood behind the glass doors, her white dress simple yet radiant. Her hands shook around the bouquet. Emily's voice teased gently beside her. "Relax, he's more nervous than you are." Selena laughed softly, her nerves easing. When the doors opened, she stepped down the aisle, her eyes finding only one figure. Adrian, waiting, dressed in a plain black suit, his gray eyes brighter than she had ever seen. Tears filled her vision as she reached him. His hands closed around hers, warm, firm, steady. The minister's words carried over the garden. Vows not of wealth, not of perfection, but of love. Selena whispered through tears, "I came to you pretending, but my heart betrayed me. I love you." Adrian's smile broke, rare and real. "And I promise, I'll believe in you, always." The garden erupted in gentle applause, small but full of heart. The ceremony neared its end. The minister's voice softened. "You may now seal your vows." Adrian leaned in, his lips brushing hers in a kiss that was both tender and unshakable. The guests clapped, Emily's laughter rising above the rest. When the sound faded, Adrian turned, his voice carrying across the garden. His words weren't for the crowd, but for her, and yet he wanted the world to hear. "No more pretending," he said, his tone firm, his eyes locked on hers. "This is forever." Selena's tears spilled freely. She smiled through them, nodding, her voice trembling. Forever. The world around them blurred. No chandeliers, no flashing cameras, no whispers of envy or doubt. Only the warmth of their hands entwined, the truth in their eyes, and the quiet certainty that they had reached the end of the storm. For years, Adrian had hidden behind masks of power. For years, Selena had hidden behind walls of independence. Now, under a canopy of roses, they had nothing left to hide. Their love was no longer a role, it was the truth. Once, she was just a woman sitting alone at a wedding, looked down on, pitied, invisible. Then came 4 whispered words, "Pretend you're with me." Those words pulled Selena Moore into a journey where money, reputation, survival, and love collided with crushing force. She faced betrayal, fear, and danger. She nearly lost everything, but in the end, she gained the only thing that mattered. No more pretending. Selena discovered that real love doesn't care about color, background, or mistakes. Real love survives storms, forgives scars, and chooses honesty over pride. And Adrian Cole, the man once defined by cold perfection, found freedom not in power, but in her. Their story reminds us that even in the darkest rooms, under the harshest eyes, love can rewrite everything. If you've ever believed that grown-up love, tested by pain but built on truth, is worth protecting, this story is for you. Stay with us. Subscribe to hear more stories like Selena's, where hearts are tested, but hope always finds a way. Because sometimes, one whispered moment is all it takes to change forever.